And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's start the innoXjogja 2020 with our first panel session with the theme of Balancing Tradition and Innovation, moderated by Anisa Menur, the editor of E27, and with our panelists with Bapak Rony, the head of communication and informatics of Special Region of Yogyakarta, and also the Honorable Gusti Kanjeng Ratu Hayu Peghageng Tepas Tandha Yekti of Kratonjogja Hadiningrat, and Imanusman, the co-founder and CPO of RuangGuru. Anisa, I'll pass to you.
Thank you very much, Rizky. Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of our attendees.
Morning.
Good morning, yeah. So I would like to welcome all of you to the first panel discussion session of this innoXjogja event. Now, before we begin our discussion, I have been informed that there will be a video that you would like to see from the Honorable Gusti Kanjeng Ratu Hayu.
Kamu sukses menghancurkan semua bayangan saya tentang Putri Keraton. Bayangan orang tentang perempuan Jawa, apalagi Putri Keraton, itu kadang luar biasa sekali yang sangat unrealistic. Anak-anaknya dari HB ke-10, semua diharuskan menyelesaikan S1 di luar negeri sendiri, nggak boleh bawa siapa-siapa, supaya kami bisa mengenal orang dari berbagai macam budaya dan bisa hidup secara mandiri. Ketika saya mau kelas 3 SMA, mau milih tujuan negara untuk kuliah, teman-teman saya itu banyak yang mau ke Eropa, tapi kata orang tuanya, yang deket aja lah, mungkin ke Australia, supaya kamu tuh sering-sering pulang. Waktu itu saya pengen sekolah di Jepang. Ketika saya matur, Bapak Ibu, boleh nggak saya sekolah di Jepang? Jawabannya cepat sekali, itu kurang jauh. Yang jauh sana sekalian biar kamu nggak pulang-pulang terus.
Right. Thank you. So, yeah, welcome back, everyone. I would like to begin by our session this morning by introducing our speakers for today. The first is that we have the Honorable Gusti Kanjeng Ratu Hayu Peghageng at Tepas Tandha Yekti of Kraton Yogyakarta Hadiningrat. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then we also have Mr. Rony Primanto Hari, Head of Communications and Informatics Office at the Special Region of Yogyakarta. Good morning, Pak Hari. Pak Rony.
Morning, Mbak Anisa.
Yes, good morning. And last but not least, we also have Imanusman, co-founder and CPO at RuangGuru. Hi, good morning, Iman.
Good morning, Anisa.
Yes. So thank you for all the speakers for taking the time to sit down with us this morning. And I would like to begin our discussion by getting a clear understanding about Yogyakarta and cultural preservation. So Yogyakarta has always been known as a cultural hub in Indonesia. But first, I would like to understand what are the challenges that the province is facing when it comes to cultural preservation. So perhaps Your Honor would like to start with explaining to us the current challenges that Yogyakarta is facing when it comes to cultural preservation.
Okay, thank you. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is actually getting lost in the sea of the global information that comes with the digital age. So because everyone has been flooded with other cultures, like as we know, we have Korean cultures coming in, and then you have basically Japanese food everywhere. That's the simplest thing. So the local Japanese culture don't have a place anymore in the younger generation. Like they don't see it on the daily basis, so they think it's old-fashioned, it's boring, and so that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. Getting people interested, getting the younger generation to understand what it is about their cultures that they never see anymore. So we have less and less people actually understand Javanese language, bahasa Jawa. So that's the very basic of your identity, your self-identity. And then when that's gone, that's gone. We cannot get it back anymore. Once that lost, and then people will be like, why does this exist only in research university overseas? Well, because we don't take care of them properly. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we have today.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Now, Pak Rony, perhaps is there anything else that you would like to add regarding this issue? But
Yes, thank you, Mbak Anisa. So that's according to our challenge in Yogyakarta is that after we have a lot of technology that we use in our daily life, we know that a lot of information is flooded to the people of Yogyakarta, especially for the young and the old people. A lot of information is affect us that everybody is lack of information, so that a lot of people in here is they know that the information is everything is right, so that's they like to know which one is wrong and which one is right. So a lot of people in Yogyakarta now we have to literate how to use the information, how to manage the information so that they can use it in the daily life. So everybody, a lot of information, and then as Gusti Hayu has mentioned that the culture in here is now it's different. So that's the challenge in here is how to literate the people in Yogyakarta to use the technology and to get the information, the right information and the right technology that we can use in our daily life to produce or to use it as a product to increase our productive life.
All right, thank you, Pak Rony. Now, before we are hearing what Iman has to say about this, I would like to understand more about the initiative that has been done by the Keraton itself and the government of Yogyakarta in order to help promote cultural preservation to the society, especially the younger populations. Perhaps Your Honor would like to explain more about Tepas Tandha Yekti and the work that it is doing?
To put it simply, Tepas Tandha Yekti is a miniature of Kominfo, Pak Rony's division. So we are responsible for the IT department of the palace. But because then our involvement with the social media, our content production for the social media, lately we've been getting assigned the PR aspect of the palace. So it's kind of like Pak Rony's division. Just the scope is just the palace. So we do not only the building like the internal system for workflow for the palace. So we just made the Abdi Dalam system, like HR system, and then but we also create we do content production for the social media, YouTube, and basically responsible for all the online platform of the palace. We do also research as part of the content production thing because that's a lot of work. Not only that, we try to do education for the internal, how do I say it? Abdi Dalam is like the public officials. So we do a lot of, but a lot of them are become Abdi Dalam after they retire. So adapting technology has been a real problem in the palace. So we try to educate about online safety and that kind of thing. Very basic stuff, but yeah, we need to get started.
Okay, I see. And yeah, and then Pak Rony, is there anything else that you want to add, like maybe from the government perspective? Is there any collaboration between these two initiatives?
Yes. The government has a lack of equipment and infrastructure to cope the information technology. So at the first, we built the infrastructure to connect our offices that spread along Yogyakarta province. So at the first time, we have to connect it and we built the infrastructure so that every offices in Yogyakarta province must be connected into one system, because before the system is spreading and not connecting each other, not integrated. At the first time, we have to build the infrastructure. And the second, the regulation. Before, we don't know that we have the regulation with the non-digital regulation. So that's a lot of bureaucracy system is based on non-digital system. So we have to change the regulation in the bureaucracy that we have to use the digital system. So a lot of people is still not involved in that system. So we have to educate the people, especially the government, that we have to use the system, the digital system. And the third, that before that, a lot of offices use their own system. So we have to integrate each other. That's it's very difficult to show them that the integration is must be done. So we have to get them to collaborate, that we have to be in one system to integrate a lot of system that they have already built. And the other, that we have to have a roadmap of digital system that we will develop. So we built we built the system, and we use the roadmap to build the system like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rony. And now we're going to Iman. So hi, Iman. I'd like to understand more about the role of an edutech startup in this matter of cultural preservation. Perhaps you'd like to share?
Sure. I mean, as Gusti Kanjeng Ratu has elaborated mentioned before, right? There are a lot of I think distractions that are coming from all over the places, and I think that definitely hinders some of the efforts in terms of how do we basically ensure the cultural preservations. But I think on the other hand, it's also very important for us to make sure that culture also stays relevant with the current target audience, right? As we are talking about young people, for instance. So how do we make sure that that they are proud of the culture that we have? They are incorporating culture into various elements that they are doing, right? And so on and so forth. So one of the examples that we are doing at RuangGuru, for instance, is that how do we basically incorporate a lot of cultural aspects, not only the symbolic, but also I think, in terms of the pedagogy as well, to the learning approach that we have. So if you look at, for example, the learning content that is available out there, it is very, for instance, it tends to be very it centralized to certain cultures or certain characteristics. Meanwhile, we know that Indonesians are very diverse, for instance, right? So what we're doing at RuangGuru is that we try to bring a lot of different symbols from all over different places, from, let's say, how we build a character, how we build a persona of the people in our content, how we think about their costumes, how we think about their dialects, how we think about their their accessories, for instance. And it could be, some simple stuff, but it actually, I think, is very important to make sure that our kids today are also realize that they have a very diverse culture. And that's what we're doing, I think, in terms of how education content in particular can try to embrace that, right? In addition to, of course, educating them about the culture itself, educating them about the importance of preserving that, and try to basically collaborate with so many different stakeholders as well to do so.
All right, thank you very much. So Pak Rony earlier had already mentioned something about collaboration between these institutions, streamlining and making sure that everyone is on board the same platform to make sure that the communication and collaboration is going on smoothly. So now I would like to understand more about, this seems to be a challenge for the different institutions that they are involved here. So I would like to understand more how the different institutions are basically tackling this challenge. Like maybe Pak Rony would like to explain?
Yes, that's now we know that using the information technology is a must. So we have to show them that we have to collaborate each other if we want to use the technology effectively. That's the challenge for us, because a lot of offices has their own system, and we have to educate them that we have to share the information and the data or the system so that we can use the system with the more effective and efficient and more useful. So that's the challenge for us. So we have to show them that the use of technology is a must, and we have to collaborate each other. So that we show them that they have to show their own system, and they have to share their system, their data, and their information. We also collaborate, or we also ask to the university to help us, because Yogyakarta has a lot of university. So we ask to the university, especially the Gajah Mada University, to help us to educate it or to show them and to develop our system so that our system can be used effective and efficiently. Something like that.
Yeah. Okay, I see. And I would like to return to Gusti Kanjeng Ratu. So when you're trying to introduce this effort to digitalize the activities within the Keraton, is there any hesitation from people inside to do this, and how do you tackle it?
Yes, so actually my division was only created on 2012, but before that, I have to give you a little background. So the organization structure in the palace, because Yogyakarta used to be a sovereign country, so we have our government structure. But when we joined with Indonesia, we only got rid of the judicial process. So but we still have our own organization structure, like the one that takes care of the asset of the palace, and we have financial division, and we have HR division, things like that. The one that can be in a position like Pak Rony, Kepala Dinas Kominfo, it's only the direct descendant of the Sultan. So before us, it was our uncles. Maybe because of the different generation mindset, when in 2009, I proposed that Kraton should have a website, but it was shut down because for them, if the palace has a website, we would be no longer mysterious and exclusive. I think that it will actually lower having a website will lower the people's perception of the palace. I don't get that up until now, but when my division was built in 2012, I asked my father, this is the time that we have at least social media. And once he said, okay, just go get it done. And that's it. I'm what you call in Indonesia, main jabatan. Because otherwise it will not get done. The people inside are very reluctant to speak with outsiders. So when my team came in, even though they're my team, but when you have suddenly have people interviewing you, what's this like in the palace? What's that for? They suddenly get very cautious. And they're like, what's this information for? So the first 2 years, it was really hard to build the content for our social media and website. And then back in 2000, so our first online presence is on Twitter in 2015. So it took me about 2-3 years to get things running. Getting the money for it was also difficult. Because, you know, a good camera equipment can run belasan juta, right? Or basically our equipment can get in very expensive real quick. And the people who were in charge for the money was like, do you really need things to be this expensive? Can you just use a pocket camera or something? That kind of mindset. So it was really different back then. And then another one was the example. Sorry, my kid is crying, trying to get my attention. Sorry about that. The risk of working from home. And then back in 2015, there was no other royal that used social media. So I looked around because we have so many kraton in Indonesia, but none of them had any social media presence back then. And then I looked at Thailand; they didn't have that. Japan also didn't have that. The biggest presence is probably the British. But the way they do things is very different. It's just the Queen Elizabeth is over here opening a ceremony somewhere. Prince William is going over there. They, like, if I ask you what's the traditional dance of the Great Britain, can you answer that? So it's a very different. Their culture is not like us. In Jogja, the culture starts with ourselves and it manifests into dances, into architecture. So the important part is making sure that people understand the philosophy, the Japanese philosophy. So my concept for the palace social media is more like educational. So we don't highlight on the Sultan going, opening ceremony here and there, but the meaning of behind every architectural pieces, all the meanings behind the dance. So it's like you can only plant certain trees inside the palace because they all have meanings. That kind of things that we try to make sure the younger generation understand. So that was a lot of hard work because the kraton was very close to outsiders, very, like I said, very reluctant to share information. So all of this was not relatively known. So the gap of my team, like they don't know what they don't know. So it was really hard to get started initially. But in Japanese we have alon-alon waton kelakon. For me, as we are okay to start small, but as long as it's solid and sustainable.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, and I would like to go back to Iman again. So RuangGuru is a very popular platform among Indonesian youth and students especially. So when reaching out to a young audience, in your experience, what are the do's and don'ts that we need to do?
Well, I don't call it do's and don'ts because I think it will depends on the context that you're applying to and the target audience that you have, right? But I think based on our experience, it's very important that we make sure that any approach that we're doing is inclusive, right? Because I think what tends to happen is that we are speaking to the echo chamber, basically the people who who love us, the people who like us, the people who think alike like us, right? And when we are trying to basically advocate for education, we're trying to include everyone. We're trying to basically bring even those who are not interested to education to become to at least have some passion, have some awareness, have some interest to study more, right? So I think it's very important to think about who are the influencers, who are the people that they listen to. And so yes, it's important to think about crafting the message that can touch their heart and soul. But I think the messenger is also very important, and that is why in terms of our approach, we do things that are quote unquote quite unpredictable coming from an education technology company. We're bringing gamers, we're bringing YouTubers, we're bringing people who traditionally do not fit into the educational discourse. But I think what we are trying to do is that because we don't want to preach to the echo chamber, because if let's say I'm the one who is speaking, or we're bringing someone like a professor from somewhere, or people who are who are fit into that box, the kids wouldn't be able to relate to the conversation. So I think one is thinking about the message, but also second is the messenger. The third aspect is the channel that you're using, right? So thinking about where do they spend the most of their time at, right? What platforms do they go to? And is there any particular way that we can do so that we can reach out more quickly and more effectively? Is that any way where we can leverage data, for instance, so we can understand better about their behaviors, about the patterns that they have, about the interests that they like, that might not necessarily overlap with what we're doing, but has some correlation to it, right? So I think third is basically I think around the channel, right? And fourth is I think definitely bringing collaborations, right? Because as we are we need to think about how do we basically mainstream education, because if this was not something that was important, we need to make this become important. And to mainstream that it means that we need to basically bring the conversation to all the platforms, to all the other parties who are previously not engaged into the conversation, so that they are now also becoming part of the movement. So that is why we are collaborating with so many parties, which includes private sectors, government, nonprofit organizations, youth movements, so that everybody feels included and everybody feels that they are part of this bigger mission, which is basically educating the nation.
All right, thank you, Iman. Okay, so now I would like to see questions from our audiences. It seems like there are already more coming up soon. And yes, so I would like to start with this one by Anonymous. Basically, their question is about which other city or country do you think has been able to merge the growth of innovation and preserving tradition well? And what can Yogyakarta learn from them? So perhaps I'm going to bring this question to Gusti Kanjeng Ratu, since you already mentioned earlier the difference between how the United Kingdom is doing their social media.
Well, yeah, but because the position of the royal family is kind of different with the other, let's say like the one in Thailand, that's also different. I think incorporating, let me just put it this way. So preserving your culture is not just about putting symbols on the things you make. So it's not just about, because culture is not just about your traditional clothes, traditional ornaments. It's not just about that, but it's about not forgetting the human part of the technology. So don't think about things have to be state of the art, but you're forgetting the human part of it. The British, they run mostly just like I guess a normal Western administration, but they refer to the royal family in a different way, because the royal family is strictly not involved in, they try to steer clear on the political side, I think, because they have to be neutral and everything. So their involvement is pretty much separate from the rest of the country. So the rest of the country can just run normally. So they're just like a normal Western country, I think. But let's see. It's a delicate part. The Japanese, no, not really. Thailand, not so much. Well, I guess Thailand is the most involved one because it's very real that you cannot talk negatively about the royal family on public, as I think, right? It's illegal. I think maybe they have in their regulation or something. So that will also affect the things that you can create, like as like startup wise. But for me, no, I don't see anything that's has a significant. Can I just I don't know if this will answer your question or not, but I'm sorry, is the background noise is very no, okay.
Oh no, it's all right. Yeah.
Okay, so in Jogja, we have one philosophy by the first Sultan, Hamamayu Hayuning Bawono. So it's basically that we have to leave the world in a better place than when we came to the world. So it's basically you have to do things environmentally friendly. So when you make a business, this is just putting it very simple. So when you have a startup, when you have the business, think about the waste that you are generating. So that's one way of incorporating culture in what you do. Think about that. Do you print receipts? Do you produce things in packaging that you cannot really recycle? So that's part of incorporating culture in things you do. So it's not just putting symbols or the picture of someone's dancing. It's not just that. That's a very superficial way of incorporating culture on the things you do, if you're just putting symbols. So that's my take.
Thank you, Your Highness. So we can say that in its openness to embrace digital technology, Yogyakarta is actually pioneering, especially if we look at the case with the comparison with other communities in the world.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that a question or?
Oh, no, it's just commenting.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question from Ray, and this is addressed to all of the panelists. And so what is the biggest hope? I think by him in hope here, it's like the end goal of inlining tech innovation with tradition of Indonesia. So maybe Gusti Kanjeng Ratu would like to explain first.
So I spent a lot of time overseas. I was doing my master degree in New York from 2014 to 2016. I met a lot of Indonesians there, third generation Indonesian who will never go to Indonesia, most likely. But they are searching part of their identity. So they want to know what their grandmothers, where their grandmas come from, basically, things like that. But they do not have a good access, an access for good, solid information about the Japanese culture. So one of my mission is to make sure that the other Japanese outside of Indonesia who will never come to Jogja don't forget their roots. They still do gamelan, they do Japanese dance, but like I said, because Japanese philosophy starts with the dalam diri, starts with ourselves and it manifests outside. So if they don't know the proper philosophy, the pakem, if I can say that, pakemnya, then all the dances that you can do, then all the gamelan that you can play, you cannot learn anything from it. So I want to make sure that all the philosophies that manifest, that those information will be accessible from people, for people everywhere, anyone interested in it. Not only that, that's for the diaspora outside of Indonesia, yeah. But personally, for me, I want my father to be able to have access information at his fingertips, basically. So I want to digitalize everything. I want to computerize everything. So my father only needs a tablet and then he can access anything about Kraton, all the assets, all the abdi dalam, anything. So that's my personal dream. And then, yeah. And then those for the international diaspora outside of Indonesia.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move on to Pak Rony then. So for the government, what is the biggest hope, the end goal of inlining tech innovation and tradition in Indonesia?
Yes, we hope that the technology not decrease the culture, but it increase the influence of the culture in our life, and then we can make our life, our system is more productive. So the economic and life quality of our people, the citizen of Yogyakarta, is increased, and there I hope that our technology can be used effectively and cheaply, because a lot of people in Jogja know that they work together. We call it gotong royong. So that's why I hope we can use our system, our technology, to cope that culture of gotong royong. We have a lot of group of community in Yogyakarta that use the social media technology to help each other, and they want us, they want that the technology can be used to help each other. So that's we hope in our system. As a government, I hope that the system, our infrastructure, our technology can be used by the people cheaply and easily, and can help them to more productive in their activities and daily activities, something like that. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Pak Rony. And how about you, Iman? What is the end goal of infusing technology, information, and cultural preservation for Indonesia?
For me, I think, I think Gusti Kanjeng Ratu has touched a very important point before in terms of how do we basically democratize access to, culture and heritage, right? But I think in addition to basically opening the access and utilizing technology as the means for it, we can also think about how do we basically create a more data-driven policy in terms of preserving the culture, right? I think as we are basically delivering a lot of content digitally, as we are trying to embrace the new technology, the new innovations into a lot of different activities that we're doing, I think we can think about how do we basically take advantage of such data that otherwise would not be able to be accessed before, right? And that informs us in terms of the new approach of doing so, in terms of how we can reach out to more, how we can deliver the right content for the right audience, right? And so on and so forth. So I think I think beyond just thinking about the end goal, I would like to think the process as an iterative process. So because because culture will always evolve and the people will also evolve. And I think in terms of the effort to do so, in terms of the effort in preserving that, it's also going to evolve, right? And therefore the iteration process will be needed here. So instead of seeing that as an end goal, I would see it as an iterative process that we will embrace, I guess.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So we have another questions from an anonymous audience, and so they bring up the example of Japan, where they see that they are able to balance between embracing new technology and preserving their traditional culture. So their question is about the mental readiness of the people itself. Do you think our people could have that right state of mind of being able to balance between the new and the old? And perhaps, if not, then what can we do to get there? So maybe we'd like to start from Iman first.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, thinking about culture, right? We tend to think tradition as the old and then the innovation as the new, right? Yes, we definitely seek to progress, and status quo is good, but for us, like, why settling for good if we can do better, right? So I think at the end of the day, we need to think about, how we embrace culture and involve people in a way that is inclusive. And that means, that we also pay attention to the different characteristics of the people that we are touching, the medium that we are using, the whether we have been, inclusive in terms of the approach or not, right? And definitely, I think, the COVID-19 pandemic also, in a way forced us to adapt to it in a lot of sense. And I think it forced people to go out of their comfort as well. And I think this can be a great, lesson learned as well in terms of how we are thinking and how we are preparing for a lot of uncertainties that might happen, which includes, whether the people are ready or not to encounter the different aspects of life that they have not accustomed or prepared before.
Okay, I see. And how about you, Pak Rony? Is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I think for Yogyakarta, I think because Yogyakarta is an educational city, I think that our people in Yogyakarta, our citizen, is more or less is ready to cope with the information technology as a use to their daily life. Our tradition now is the culture of our system in here is just working together and help each other. So we know that if anyone has a lack of information or a lack of education of technology, the other people will educate them, and the other will be help them to use how to cope with the technology. So that's why in Yogyakarta, our system is used by a lot of people, by a lot of community, to cope the system, our tradition, and then they use the information to increase their productivity in their daily life. So that's why in Yogyakarta, our system, we work together with other people, with five stakeholder: government, community, university, business, and people, working together to cope the technology to the daily life and to increase the economic of Yogyakarta. So I think more or less Yogyakarta is ready to cope the technology to their daily life.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rony. And now last but not least to Gusti Kanjeng Ratu. How do you, are our people ready for this? And if not, then how do we?
I think it's human nature that people are afraid of changes. So when changes come, usually the first instinct is being defensive, unless you can show that it actually will benefit them. But I think this is one of the examples that you really have to see how the local culture is before you formulate a strategy to make sure that people will do it. So one, they are afraid of changes. Especially in Jogja, sometimes we have something that called nerimo ing pandum. So in one side, it's being grateful for what you have. So you will find that in Jogja, it's a little difficult to incentivize people just using monetary value. So if you just offer money, that will not always work. But if you show it the way that this will benefit your direct community, your very close circle, they're very more likely to accept it. So you really have to show them how this will benefit them, right? And then the approach of doing things that the approach of implementing change, basically you have to remember that the end user, they are human. So you just cannot say, you know what, do this and expect them to just do it. No, you cannot do that. So you have to remember that you need to cater to people. And then on top of that, for changes, you have to have strong leadership. Like I said, the first instinct will usually be defensive, but if the top doesn't insist on saying, I know this is uncomfortable, I know this is probably more work for you, but we have to do this. If the leader don't keep insisting on the changes, it will not happen. So I guess we need all the components: strong leadership, and then leaders who actually care about the people, make sure they understand what's going on, make sure to address all their worries. If all those components don't exist, then changes are not going to happen.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Uranus. That was a very interesting point about how even monetary incentive does not change people. It's all about
not always work. Well, maybe in other areas, that's why you really have to know the culture, because in some other area, maybe they prefer, okay, I will do more work if you give me more money. In some areas that work.
Okay, that's interesting. You have learned something new every day. So yes, I'm going to use the next part of the session to really understand about the future and looking ahead. So now that we understand the kind of initiative that has been done by the palace, by the government, and then by startups, I think it's time to learn more about what is next for us. So like, for example, Gusti Kanjeng Ratu, do you have any other plans with the initiative that you're doing now? Like how do you see that this is going to progress in the future? What is your vision for it?
Well, basically, what we are trying to do here is to provide more to provide easier access for people to access the knowledge in the palace. So that's why we've been creating a digital library, digitalizing all the dances, traditional gamelan and things like that. But not only that, we recognize that this is something that cannot just be done online. Like I said, we don't forget about the people. So we try to make it so you can access the information online, but to put it together into a knowledge, we have to have interaction face to face. And this is something that's been really difficult to do since the pandemic. But we try to provide more, more intensive face to face. So we have, let's say, the anniversary of the coronation of the Sultan, we have that ceremony live stream every year, but we try to hold, I guess, since the pandemic hit, it's kind of like a webinar. with a really small circle, and then we provide a more inclusive meet, I guess, so people can actually ask questions. They can deepen their knowledge, basically putting together information into knowledge. That's been because doing that has been really costly in terms of the efforts, not only just the money, but also people's. That's been really hard to do. The interest is very, very real. Like a lot of people have been asking for that, but yeah, we try to, hopefully soon we can put that that plan into action very soon and in a larger scale, I guess.
All right. Thank you, Your Highness. Yeah, so I would like to move to Pak Rony as well. What is next for the government in terms of technological?
We hope that in the future our services with the technology can be accessed easily and can be accessed by all of the level of the people. Especially in the future, we concern to provide the system that can be accessed for disabled. We know that now the Yogyakarta is also a lot of people in Yogyakarta has a disabled. For instance, the blind, and they can hear, and also they can walk or they can move easily. So that's why now we concern to provide the system that can be accessed not only for the normal people, but also for the disabled people. We have also the peraturan daerah or the regulation that every office has to provide the services for the disabled also. So that's why our offices, and we also have a small co-working space that provide the system and the infrastructure that can be used by the disabled easily. And the second, that as I mentioned before, that we hope that our system can increase the productivity of the people in Yogyakarta by using the information technology during the daily life. So that's why we built a lot of infrastructure. So not only the people in the city can be access our services, but also the people in the remote area can be access our system, because we know that during the pandemic, the contact services or direct services must be limited, so we have to use the information and technology. So that's why our government mentioned that maybe in the future a lot of people will stay in the village, not in the city. So that's why we concern to build our infrastructure for the whole provinces. And the third, that we hope that our system can be accessed by the people in the global area, so they can know about the situation, condition, and potential of Yogyakarta. So if they have, I hope they can interested and help us or invest in Yogyakarta with the information and technology. That's our hope. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now for Iman. So as an edutech startup, what is next? Do you have anything else that you would like to explore when it comes to collaborating on cultural preservation, or maybe more content regarding this on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, for us, first of all, we want to make sure that we maintain the quality of the content that we're producing, right? Because I think the platform is now being used by millions of students across the country, and it is important for us to ensure that the quality is basically top notch, right? And second, specifically, how do we make sure that the accessibility is also becoming a lot more inclusive than ever? So we're thinking about how do we basically make sure that the services are disabled friendly? For instance, we have just recently launched an automatic captioning on our platform, for instance. So all the videos now can be seen as well with the full captions to help people, the deaf, for instance, who are not able to use the service in regular way to get benefited from this type of feature, for instance, right? How do we, let's say, create an offline capability as well to ensure that people who have troubles of accessing due to internet access, either given the fact that the access is limited or given the fact that it is not affordable enough, right, can access our content. So I think it remains a top priority for us, and definitely I think in doing so, we are also trying to collaborate with so many different partners, which includes government as well in this particular case, because about education in particular it is quite one of the sectors that are quite heavily regulated by the government, right? So we need to not only just for compliance sake, but also it's important because they are the ones who mobilize things, who regulate things, right? Who operationalize things as well on the ground. So it's important to make sure that everything that we're doing is not just aligned, but also include them in the process, and also make sure that we are being also included in the process. So there is a two-way communications that are benefiting each other, which at the end of the day will basically benefit the end user, which is the student. And in an approach of doing that, we definitely have to respect values, respect cultures, and try to incorporate as much as we can. And I agree with what other panelists have mentioned before, that it's not just about the symbolic aspects of it, but I think really how do you embrace that? And I think it's also not just on the point of of delivering that to the user, but also on how we are actually approaching that as a team. We actually have quite a large team as well, for instance, in Jogja and so many other places, right? How do we create a culture that embrace also a part of our identity, as Indonesian, as locals, right? How do we take that into advantage instead of actually as a hindrance, for instance? So I think there are just some of the couple of things among so many things that we want to do in the near future. Yeah.
Okay, so Iman, I'm also aware that as a startup, you have collaborated with a lot of different parties, like for example, the government, schools, and a lot of different institutions. So for the startup founders and employees in our audiences, what are the advice that you can give to them in order to help them to collaborate more seamlessly with different kinds of organizations and institutions?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things, right? One is that when we think about partnership, it's really about how do we bring mutual benefit to all the parties involved, right? So it's really important that when you are partnering, the value added must be clear for the other side. If in this case you are the ones who are proposing that initiative, right? So it should be clear. You should realize what's in it for them. What is the low hanging fruit as well, so that it is easier to implement, because we need also to understand the difficulties that they have, the challenges. Sometimes it's not because what they don't want to implement or collaborate, but there are some limitations that they have that we also need to understand. So it's important to have a quick win and show that there is a progress that can be done in a short period of time, and that will be a stepping stone and an important milestone to basically build a rapport on what can be done in the future, right? So that's the first one. Second as well, I think it's really important to ensure that there is a collaborative process that is happening between all the parties. It's very often that we, because I think what happened with a lot of startups, because they feel like, oh, we bring the innovations here, we're bringing in the solutions, they think that they know everything. In fact, most of the time we actually do not know what is happening. So it's very important to also appreciate all the different contexts, all the different knowledge that the government or the other parties will potentially bring, because they have been there much longer than us, right? They know the people, they know what they are struggling with. So it's important to ensure that there is a collaborative process that includes the voice of the partner, and include them in the planning, so that not only that it's more targeted and it's more appropriate, but also it's that there is an increasing sense of belonging towards the project that we're doing, because they feel that they're part of the plan as well.
All right, thank you, Iman. So we are actually nearing the end of our panel discussion today. So I would like to make a conclusion from our discussion now today is that, number one, when it comes to cultural preservation and digital technology, the first thing that we should do is that we need to understand our audiences and figure out a plan that suits what they actually need, instead of forcing something to them. And then secondly, it's also very important for different kind of institution, from the palace, the government, to even startups and businesses, to collaborate together in order to achieve the results that they wanted. And then lastly, of course, it's always very important to continue on innovating and figure out what we are going to do next. So yeah, after this session, the next session at innoXjogja is going to happen at 2 p.m. Jakarta time. It's called the Intertwined Future of Food, Health, and Our Environment. So make sure that you do not miss that. So yes, at the end of this session, I would like to extend our biggest gratitude to all of our speakers, Gusti Kanjeng Ratu Hayu, Pak Rony, and then Iman eventually. Thank you very much for your time and your insights in this discussion. And this is me, Anisa Menur from E27, signing off. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.